Hello everyone. We have Riya here, who's gotten selected in a different company, but she's also attended Jio and reached till the final round. So I wanted to talk to her about the experience of the same, right? So Riya, the first round, as you said, was on AMCAT platform, right?
Yes, sir.
So can you tell us about the sections that were there in the test?
Yes, sir. Sure. So we the sections were the basic. Everything was quite basic. It wasn't for a high level. So if you had basic knowledge also, then it was fine for us to qualify the exam. So the sections were the cons, the reasoning, as
English.
the verbal and the technical MCQs, as well as we had a section for automata too. So
Automata coding, not automata fix,
yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
Coding.
Automata coding.
So in coding,
The
there were
for
two coding questions.
Yes, sir. We had two coding questions, and we were given 40 minutes to finish those two coding
45, I
questions.
think, would be the right number.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
I don't
So at least,
remember the.
so interview changes, right? But for the written, we may have a little more information. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So coming to the computer programming MCQ, so was it like computer programming or computer science? Were they like DBMS and all of those questions? DBMS,
Yes,
OS,
sir.
computer networks,
Definitely.
or
They
was
were.
it like C, C++, OOPS, and DSA? So there
No,
are
sir.
there
Sir,
are two sections in there are two different components. There's computer programming MCQ, there is computer science MCQ. So
No, sir,
computers,
these
huh?
were computer science MCQs. It
Okay,
wasn't computer programming. So the output, the questions wasn't like output is right or not. It wasn't
got it,
like
got
that.
it.
We had the questions on DBMS, OOPS, and ADA, DSA, COA, OS, all the
All the core
core
computer
subjects.
science, right?
So,
And
yes, sir,
obviously
all the core
obviously
subjects.
obviously DSA is also part of that. C, C++, input output questions like one or two were also there,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes,
Got
sir.
it.
Like yes,
So
sir.
basically there are 25 questions and 25 minutes in that particular scenario, right?
Somewhat like this. Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Also, for other people's reference, can you please tell us the package that was offered?
So it was 3.5 lakhs
3.5.
per
So
annum.
again,
Yes.
for other people reference, there are two different packages for Reliance Jio. One is what she mentioned. There's a one higher package also that is more than 6 LPA. It also keeps on changing college by college. So that has a different scenario. In that particular case, there is it generally does not happen on AMCAT. That earlier used to happen on a platform called as Interview Bit, but then it changed to Hacker Earth. Both so there are two coding questions and then 22 MCQs, and the time is shared between all of them, which is 1 hour 45 minutes. Again, so Ria, in the case then you had interviews, right? So how many interviews were there in total?
So there were total three interview rounds. Two were technical, and the last one was the HR.
Okay. So in the technical round for the first one, can you tell us the first few questions that were asked by the interview?
Yes. My interview went for around like 40 minutes or like 40 minutes to 1 hour. It was like 40 minutes. The questions were basically for DBMS. They asked DBMS like what are the keys. They asked what are the keys, different keys like
Primary key, candidate
primary
key,
key,
foreign
foreign
key,
key, and yes, sir.
composite
Like these.
key.
Yes, sir. Sir, they also asked for the OS, the virtual. What is virtual memory, and what are the memory components, and how memory is allocated?
Like
Something like this.
internal fragmentation, external fragmentation, all
Yes,
of
sir.
these things. So
These.
memory management, they asked. Did they ask any questions from process management, like let's say process, kernel, threads?
Sir, they did not ask
Okay,
anything
got it.
like this, but they also asked about the not from me, but from my colleagues. They asked from the different types of OS, different types of OS. They asked like the multi-programming and multitasking OS.
There are batch OS, there's
Yes,
DOS,
sir.
and all of that. Got it. Right. Any questions from object-oriented programming, C, C++,
Yes,
Java?
definitely. The firstly only they started with for what is class and object. Then they came up to the like what the pillars of OOPS. So this is the question like OOPS. The basically what the class and
Polymorphism,
object and
abstraction,
polymer. Yes, sir. So
inheritance.
this was asked in all of I think
Every interview they'll ask.
Yes, sir. No, it was a very basic question, and definitely everyone and every interview asks it. So they also Geo also the interviewer for the Geo also asked this, and then they also pillars of hoops and for examples if you can give regarding like for inheritance,
Any
give an example.
did they focus upon C or Java or Python?
So not Java, like they did not focus on Java, but n- not on any particular language. They did not focus on any particular
Okay.
language, but all were the basics
Any
questions.
any coding question that you got asked that okay, can you please write a program or explain how this particular thing works?
Uh, so coding questions, I don't think they asked
Data
me.
structures,
No, sir, Geo did not ask for any
projects.
of the
So
data structure
projects.
questions. Yes, sir,
So I was
they
just curious that okay, 45 minutes interview. Obviously, they may have asked something else also, right? So which is
yes,
I
sir.
was just trying
So
to inquire all the things that I possibly can help you get reminded of, because again, it may be a little too long when you gave the interview, so
yes,
you may
sir.
not
It was
recollect it.
approx 3 to 4 months back when I gave the Geo interview. So
Okay.
it is quite unclear for me what was
So
exact things.
approximately they would have discussed about 10-15 minutes regarding projects.
Yes, so firstly, like they started firstly they started with my basic introduction. Then they came up to the project. The first question only after my introduction was the project. Like, what is your project? Give a brief description about it. So told everything about my project, like what is it and
Can
why
you tell
I've
me? Can you
made.
tell us basically what was your project about? Like
Yes, sir.
basic
So it wasn't.
highlights.
Yes, sir. So it wasn't it's a too high, a too big project. It wasn't like that. I told them was just a small one. So it was a DigiNotes, a web application which I've created with my friends. So I told everything like it was, you can say like it was a Google Classroom. It was like just like a Google Classroom which I have created on my own. So that was my project. So I gave a brief description about it, uh, and then they came up to these basics questions, and they also saw in my uh, resume that my another experience was in which I have mentioned the subject was computer networking, and they also highlighted that as many of the students don't know much about computer networking, and I was the one which I think I know. It is my strong point, I think, the computer networking. So I have just mentioned it in my resume. So they did ask me for a long time for my it's regarding my computer networking, and they asked many questions from it, like the OSI and the
UDP,
IP address, MAC address, DNS, and such
subnet,
many
subnet, masking
small
subnet.
basic questions. Yes, some basic questions they
Got it.
asked, and that's the
IPv4,
thing. Interview.
IPv6,
No, sir.
TCP/IP.
No, sir. They did not go till IPv4, IPv6.
IPv4, IPv6 is a very standard question. Like everybody asks,
No,
so
sir.
which is why
But
I was
they
like,
did
okay,
not. Yes,
got
sir.
it.
So, but they did not ask about it, and then this was the point which the interviewer also highlighted, that you have a knowledge of computer networking. Many children don't have it. Are you confident about it? So I said yes. You may ask questions if you like to. So they asked me these certain questions, and they were aware that yes, I know about it. And so then they stopped with my interview. There were also questions on mm, pointers. They asked about the pointers, what are they, and how can we allocate dynamic memory. So these were the basic questions which they asked me in the.
Acha. In the second interview, how was that? The
So
second TR?
second, yes, sir. So the second was also technical, but it wasn't of so long. Like the first interview was taken for 40 minutes or 1 hour approximately, and but this was taken for approx 20 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes or so. and then it also consisted of very basic questions, and it has I think they in this que- uh, in this interview round, they asked me for one or two basic coding questions, like the basic ones, uh, palindrome or something they asked. I don't remember
Basically
the like.
top 100 programs. So for all the
Yes,
other
sir.
people who are wondering what kind of questions they may have asked, we have a list on our website called as top 100 on prepinstar.com. You can go and check that out. So basically those are the basic level of questions that these service based companies ask. And then obviously these are not valid for, let's say, a company who's paying more than 5 lakh or 6 lakhs, but for all the companies which are paying less than 5, right?
Ye- Yes,
Got
sir.
it.
So the basic questions and like basic oops and all the repeated ones were there, and like just the basics ones, not too higher deep knowledge we need for it. That only consisted for the second, and they also asked for the project, for my project, like explain what was your project. So it was only like yeah.
Got it. ठीक है. So in the HR interview, you reached there, but again you did not clear what were the first questions in that.
So it was a very small round. The HR one was like only for 5 minutes, I can say. For the thing first, he asked me like, "What is your tell me about the project. Give a brief description regarding it, and who are you? Give your introduction." This was the thing he started with, and then he asked like, how many members are there in your family, and if you will be called to Jio, will they allow, and why if and who are what your father does, and like these were the personal some questions. They asked me where do you live and which college
Okay.
you are
So
from.
can you tell me what did you answer for the question if they call you to, let's say, I believe their office is in Navi Mumbai,
Yes.
that if you are called to their office, would your parents allow? What did you answer to that particular question?
Yes, so I said yes, definitely. My parents will allow. They have taught me and they have made me an independent child, so that I can work and I can face the world. So they'll definitely send me. And I also have my younger brother, as well as my as well as I have many other. I live in a
Got it.
joint
So
family, so
basically,
I
you
have
said
many other
yes.
members.
So I think the
Yes.
only reason from which I can understand that maybe why you were rejected in Geo HR was because again your English is fine. There's no issue with that. That's basic sense that okay, let's say they had to select 20 people, for example, right?
Yes, sir.
And based upon the marks that you got, so let's say written plus technical one plus technical two plus HR, if you sum all of that, the final number, I think that you did not make the cut in that particular case. So I think that's
So
the
maybe
reason,
I also thought.
right? Because I don't particularly see any reason, right? Generally, the companies what these companies do is they have a cutoff for each one. That okay, cumulative score in each round should be at least this. Then only you can go next. And final decision is also based upon the total score for most of the companies because this is again done to a lot of students think that okay, it's like a make and break. It doesn't matter what you do in the previous round. What matters is how you are doing in this one. It doesn't work like that. The reason why companies don't do this is, for example, let's say if some particular interviewer is partial, or let's say you are from the same caste or city or some affinity towards a particular student, right? So in that case, that particular person saying yes to you in that particular round would be a little impartial. So, which is why to normalize that, they are like, okay, total overall performance should be encountered because it happens many, many times that in big companies like TCS and all of those, there are two people who are from, let's say, the same small city, right? Obviously, they'll favor them, right? Just some basic sense. So, I think that's it. Again, you are placed in other company,
Yes,
so
sir.
that's pretty good, fine, right? Thank you everyone. I hope you would have learned a little bit of it. Right.